And to talk to Jeff Lang, we have Jeff Lang here. Welcome to Noise 11, Jeff. It's been a while.
Good to be talking with you, Paul.
Yeah, we've got a very interesting new album from you, More Life. And I would imagine that this isn't something you could throw together very quickly. This, to me, sounds like it's been a work in progress that has developed over a number of years.
That's true, yeah. I mean, it takes more work doing this type of record because of wanting to do it this way, where each person is basically a different collaborator almost for every song. And also having the idea that each song would be written with them. It was almost like 2/3 of the amount of work that would go into a regular album would go into each song, which just meant it just took a little bit more time, which that's okay, had some time in the wake of the pandemic. So, just put that time to use. But yeah, it did take a little bit more. It was more of a Tetris puzzle.
You've been very prolific over your career, and I think there's 30 plus something albums over that time. But this is really the longest gap you've had in between albums.
Between sort of Jeff Lang albums, it is, yeah. But against that, in the interim, I did an album with my partner Alison Ferrier. We did the High Ace album together, and I did actually do a very low key instrumental 12-string guitar album called Interstate Pulse in the last couple of years as well. So I haven't sort of exactly been, taking it super easy, but it's a few years now between, an album of new songs by myself, and that part of that reason is that I've been working on this album, and it just takes a bit of time.
Yeah, because collaborations are nothing new. I mean, we've got the Danny McKenna 2019 Next They Come For You album. There was a Chris Whitley album, Dislocation Blues, coming up to 20 years old now, I think. 2010.
Yeah, it is.
20. Yeah, 2006.
Yeah.
18 years. Wow.
Goodness me.
How time flies.
That's scary.
Yeah, so getting together and actually doing an album of collaborations, with different people on each song, some people being repeated across a number of songs, though. Did this process happen like the Chris album happened, like the Danny album happened?
They were sort of different to each other, actually. I mean, the Chris Whitley album happened because I'd known Chris for like 10 plus years. I did a few shows with him in the States opening for him. And at the end of the first night, he was really keyed up about us making a duo album together. And it sort of caught me by surprise, but I was a real fan of what he did. And so my initial thought of why would you, Chris Whitley, need another guitar player singer on a record next to you? That's superfluous. But, a day or so later when he was still talking about it, I went, well, I'd love to do it. So yeah, let's do it. The album with Danny was a different sort of thing where I just had been talking to him about writing and saying, because he plays with such a great song-driven style of drumming, I just was curious, do you ever write songs? And he said, nah, it's not really my strength. So I sort of tried to engineer a way with an instrumental album of kind of almost secretly getting him to compose music with me. So, just set up a way of doing it where his ideas would be the genesis of the songs in a lot of ways. So, and involve him in the writing of some music. This one was a different sort of thing where I was going into it thinking, I want to do a bunch of different collaborations. Initially, the first song that was written for it was the one with John Butler, Seek High. And we wrote a couple of songs together. And I thought, oh, yeah, okay, I'm not sure. John's a pretty busy guy, so I'm not sure when we're going to, record these. And then I thought, well, okay, I should just think along these lines, though, and see if there's some other people who would be interested in writing some songs. So I wrote one together with Cara Robinson from Hat, Fitz and Cara, and they came down. They used to stay at my wife and I's house when they were on tour in Victoria, and I had the studio right there. So I said, when you're down next, let's record this song we've written. And I wasn't sure whether it was going to be something that I'd just do periodically as a 7-inch single, just as a limited edition thing. So I recorded that one, and it sort of sat there. I actually recorded the 2 songs with them, and they just kind of sat there on a reel of 1-inch tape for a while. And then a little while after that, I sort of got back in touch with John Butler and said, hey, do you want to, maybe a year later, so, do you want to find a way we can record at least one of these songs that we've written? And so that sort of then, when he said, yeah, let's do that, then that kind of started the process in motion of it being an album, even though it was only two songs, and 2 artists. It's like, okay, now I can start thinking about who else might be fun to do something with. And instead of it being something that happens just whenever and is a periodical limited edition 7-inch single, to make it an album and just try and do it, all in one sort of, one after the other. And, one after the other ended up taking like 3 years or something. But that's kind of how it's started off as a project.
Let's talk about the Hat, Fitz and Cara thing there for a start, because the precedent with that particular collaboration, the Silverbacks.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. That was a very thrown together quick album that Fitz and I did together back in 2000 or 2001, or something like that. Actually, no, maybe even 99. Yeah, 1999. We just done Byron Bay Blues Fest, and the sound engineer who we were working with worked at a studio in Brisbane. And so straight after Blues Fest, we just went into the studio for one afternoon and just bashed out. It's kind of like the Rolling Stones jamming with Edward thing. We just went in there and just played a bunch of stuff, recorded it, and then it was a low key release, and we just called it the Silverbacks. And but Fitzy and I, we go back a lot of years. He's been a mate for a long time.
A bit of a reunion of sorts.
Yeah. We always keep in touch. I mean, Cara, his wife, she's like one of my wife's best friends too. So we're always in touch with that pair.
The album's out October 4. Prior to that, the song that people have heard is Seek High, the one with John Butler. This is such an epic track, clocking in at 7 minutes 40 seconds, the longest song on the album.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
This one started a few years ago, didn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it started actually out of John and I being asked to do a TED talk thing at the Opera House. And, it's like, oh, we'll get you guys to do something together at that. And we both went, I don't want to just go up there and talk. What have I got to say? Let's just write a couple of songs and that can be what we do. And then we ended up rabbiting on between songs and being a couple of idiots. So we kind of managed to avoid, in our minds ahead of time, doing the talkings lest we make fools of ourselves. And then we went up on stage and talked a lot and made fools of ourselves anyway. But we had a couple of new songs, and the Seek High was one of them. And so, that kind of spurred, it was one of the things that spurred this project into being. And when it came time to record it, we played it initially at that Opera House gig on acoustic instruments, and I thought it'd be fun to do it with the drums and maybe play electric steel guitar. And John still stuck with the banjo, but he runs it through an amplifier as well, so it can get a bit gnarly. And we did that sort of live off the floor with me singing, John and I playing our instruments, and Danny on drums. And then John added his vocals afterwards, and we both added different bass elements. I played some bass guitar and John played some synth bass, and that was the basis of that track. But we both like to express ourselves, which is code for waffling on our instruments. And so, it ended up having a lengthy coda with us both just sort of, expressing ourselves, stroke waffling on.
There's a couple of tracks on here that I would imagine must have been pretty daunting recording. She uses Silence Like a Hammer and Adults Are Full of Shit, 2 collaborations with the legendary Don Walker of Cold Chisel. I was talking recently with Troy Casadale, and he was telling me a story about when they collaborated together. And, he met up with Don over coffee one day and presented Don with a song. And Don sort of just sat there for about 30 minutes, didn't say anything. Troy thought, this is going nowhere fast. And then suddenly Don comes out with all the verses. And he spent 30 minutes in silence just processing what he was given and then actually created it there on the fly. And Troy said it was like watching an artist, a masterpiece, being made before your eyes. Was that what it was like working with Don on these two songs for you?
Well, I'll tell you, the intimidation factor for me is partly because, Don's been a hero of mine since I was a teenager. So I still kind of pinch myself that he's like my mate. Wow, because he's a great dude, and he's far from an intimidating guy. But yes, I've written with Don a couple of times in the past, and it is pretty intimidating having this guy who you look up to sitting there with your notebook with some words on it, and you're like, God, Don's looking through my lyrics. He doesn't, and like Troy indicated, he doesn't waste a word. So if he's thinking it up, running it over in his head, he's just sitting there, dead silent, looking at your words on your pad, and then just sort of looking out the window, and you're like, he thinks I'm a clown. It's your own kind of imposter syndrome kicks in big time. But so actually, in the case of both those songs, and I wanted to approach it a little bit differently, and so I took the somewhat bold move of just sending Don sets of lyrics, because I know he's a great lyricist, but I thought, well, he's also a great writer of melodies, and he's a real master of creating a mood for a song. So I sent him a choice of three, with the thinking being, well, he surely won't think all three of them are crap, and one of them might stand up. And he's actually finished all three of them. There's another one that is in the works that I might use for another record down the track. So that was really nice for starters. But and I said to him, look, a couple of things. Don't think of them as songs that you're finishing for me to sing. We're both going to sing them. So really just come up with something that would suit you. And then, because I love his solo stuff. It's probably my favorite thing that he's done, him and his band. It's just great music. So I just said to him, look, if it would suit you and your band, then, go with that. And feel free to change anything in these you like, because you're the Don. So she uses silence like a hammer. It was actually one of those things where I was like, wow, really? Okay. He didn't want to change a single syllable of it. He just came up with, he had no suggestions for improving that, which was a real like, wow, okay. Felt like I was slightly endorsed by the Don. It was cool. It was nice. It was a nice moment for me. And yeah, so it's just his tune and chords and my words. Adults Are Full of Shit was like a first draft, and I actually thought that was a throwaway, but I just put it in there as just one of the three options. And he used all of the words I'd sent him, and he just added a few lines to some of the later verses because it was a first draft. The initial verses had a certain rhyme scheme, and then the later verses that I'd sent him didn't have as many lines, and so it didn't fit the same rhyme scheme. And so he basically just added some lines to make it fit. So again, there was nothing taken out from what I'd sent him. It just added, like, I think 4 lines to the song.
I take it from what you're saying then that the titles of both of these songs, She Uses Silence Like a Hammer and Adults Are Full of Shit, are your titles. They're very they're very poetic. They're very John Walker titles.
I don't know if Adults Are Full of Shit is that poetic, but
it is in a way. It is in a way, because it paints a picture. I mean, as soon as you say it, like I've got an image of what the song could be.
Well, I mean, I will add something to with She Uses Silence Like a Hammer. I should mention that title came out of something that the late Chris Wilson said to me. We were actually at a party, and I was talking with Chris about someone that we both knew who another one of those people who doesn't say a lot, and they can be a bit intimidating to be around, actually. And Chris said, "Oh yeah, but blokes like that, they use silence like a hammer." I went, "Geez, that's good, Chris. That sounds like it should be in a song." we should write that song, you and me. And he goes, nah, you have it. You write the song. Said, are you sure? Because I will. I'll use it. And he said, yeah, have it. So he just said it once. And, when you're writing songs, you always got an ear out for a phrase that sounds interesting. And that definitely, I just put that straight into my phone. Uses silence like a hammer. I think I just put she uses silence like a hammer in my phone. And I looked at it a few days later and went, yeah, that really should be something. And so I just wrote this big string of words, all of which in the same order they came out are the words that are on the album.
So how long ago was that?
But yes, that's quite a few years ago now. Might have been at Sarah Carroll's 50th. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Yeah, it was one of those sort of landmark event parties. So yeah, 6-7 years ago, something like that.
William Crighton also gets 2 songs on the album, Hands and Goodbye Amsterdam. So Don gets 2, William gets 2, Fitz gets 2, Fitz and Cara get 2. They're the lot that double up. It's interesting with the sequencing of the album, though. Like you've got, collaborations that are repeated through the album, but they don't sort of cluster together on the album. How was the sequencing done for this record?
Yeah, I just tried to have it flow like a record would. And that can be, with all of the different other voices. I mean, my voice is the one that kind of ties it together somehow. I just tried to, instead of thinking of it like, well, we'll put those two together in clumps or doing it in sequential order of being recorded, I just tried to have it flow the way a record would. I still think of it in terms of side A and side B and so forth, just because that's the LP was the format of my youth. So LPs and cassettes were it. So I still think of it in those ways. Even if it's a CD, I tend to think of it in terms of what takes it to a certain point and then where the side B would start, even though it's pointless on a CD even. And you might argue that in today's world where it's just song by song, it doesn't have a point to it. But I still figure if there is anyone out there who likes to listen to it in sequence, then try and put together a sequence that works. So that was my thinking with that. Although, the 2 songs with William, Hands and Goodbye Amsterdam, were recorded a fair bit apart. I mean, Goodbye Amsterdam was one of the last, I think it might have even been the last song that was finished for the album. And it was a good while after we'd done Hands. So it was just, I'd recorded the backing for that song and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. I thought, well, maybe it was at the end of one of the sessions that I'd recorded with someone else. Myself, Danny McKenna, and Ben Franz just put down this backing, and I didn't have words for this, but I had the chords had an implied melody. And at a certain point, I thought, yeah, it would be good to have another song on there. So I just got in touch with William and said, hey, do you want to see if you can come up with some words for this tune that I've got here? And just sent him the backing, and he came up with the words for that one. We kind of finished them together, changed it around a bit together, but most of those words are Williams for Goodbye Amsterdam. And it was like the last song that sort of came into play.
Have you been keeping track of the number of albums that you've had? I'm guessing this is around 32, 33, 34, must be somewhere around there.
Yeah, every now and then, management will go, how many is it now? Because we want to put it in a press release. And I'll be like, I'm not sure. So, yeah, I think it is 32 because they wanted me to count it up for this one. So, yeah.
And that includes live albums, I take it, as well?
Yeah, well, that probably doesn't include certain ones that have just been put up for a short while on Bandcamp and things like that. So, I mean, it's supposed to be quality, not quantity, though.
True. And the album More Life in 2024 comes 30 years to the year after the first album, Ravenswood. Will you be marking Ravenswood at all in 2024 for its 30th anniversary?
I did a Bandcamp only sort of extra, like a expanded edition of it with demos and some contemporary live recordings and things, some extra songs, outtakes and things like that. So that's up on my Bandcamp site. That's all. I didn't really make much of as was in keeping with the initial release of that album, because that album was just purely done off the stage. I was pretty ignorant back then. I didn't really think about, taking it into records. I took it into a couple of shops that I frequented back in the day, and then just, take in 10 copies and put them on consignment, and then I forgot about them and never collected. They might still be sitting in mothballs out the back somewhere. Yeah, and I didn't really, my radio in my van didn't work. I was living in my van all through the early 90s, all through the 90s, touring, and the radio didn't work. So I didn't really know about community radio stations. So I was just in this weird little bubble of ignorance about the business, and I just made that album and sold it off the stage. So that was the extent of it. So it seems in keeping to do a 30th anniversary where I just put something up with no fanfare and just have it be another completely unknown thing.
Yeah. So every song on the new More Life album is a collaboration. How will you handle the live performance of these songs? Obviously, when people happen to be in town, I'm sure they'll pop over and jump up with you, but not everyone can be around at every time.
That's right. So, I mean, the tour, I'm taking out the Ben Franz and Danny McKenna are doing most of the shows. And then on the last 3 weekends of November, Ben is doing some other stuff that he was already committed to. So Michael Vidal, who plays in Don's band and played on those 2 songs, is going to be playing with us. So I'm going to have the band from the album on the road, and William Crighton is going to be performing on all but one of the shows. So he's going to be playing in the band with us and also stepping up front and singing some of his songs, backing me on some of mine, doing the 2 songs that we recorded together as part of the shows. And then, in certain places like Perth, John Butler is going to join us and do the same thing, do Seek High with us, but also some of his stuff and play in the band with some of my songs. In Melbourne, Kerri Simpson, Suzannah Espie, and Paul Williamson, who plays sax on one song, they're going to be joining us along with William and the band. Fitz and Cara are going to join us with William as well in a couple of shows in Queensland. So that's the sort of stuff that's going on. It would have been great to have Don join us on some songs, but he seems to be sort of fairly busy with this band he's got.
He's got some new kid band.
There's some little junket they're doing around the country that sold like 160,000 tickets in 5 hours or something. So is fairly busy at the moment. So I don't think that's going to line up. But so that's we're doing. The guests are joining whether they can, and thankfully. William's going to be there at all of the shows except for one.
Yeah, well, we're guaranteed to get Hands and Goodbye Amsterdam at each show then.
Yeah, and a bunch of Williams songs too, which is because I mean I'm often touring when I'm off the road and William's doing stuff. I'm often playing in his band too as a side man, which is really great fun. So yeah, William's a blast.
Yep. Well, More Life is the album. And if you're watching this after October 4, it is out now. If you're watching it today, tomorrow, or Thursday, it's coming at the end of the week. And Jeff's out on tour. We point down here and then I can stick dates and URLs in so people know where to go and find you on tour. It's quite a big tour going right across the country. Jeff Lane, great to have you here at Noise 11.
Good to be talking with you, Paul. Thanks a lot, mate.